Hello, everyone. Welcome to VictoriaMetrics Tech Talks. What is this, episode 8 now, is it, Matthias?
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah,
So
sure.
we're eight
Sure.
episodes in already.
Yeah, that's right. I'm thinking we do one a month. Man, I can't keep track of time anymore. That's great. So, hey, thanks again for being here for this one, Matthias, and thanks for everybody who's going to be joining in for us. Today, we're going to be looking at what we're calling no nonsense networking. I at first thought it was nonsense networking because I was coming in to help on this. So, yeah, Matthias, you want to just give a real quick overview of what this is before or actually, before I do that, sorry, is there anything that came up this week or since our last talks that you just backfill from what we had at the last one, or anything interesting that you've experienced in the logging or any space that we're talking about world here?
So yeah, something really cool that happened to me or I discovered while researching this was we went to Southeast Linux Fest a couple of months ago, right? And we ran into a bunch of Libre NMS users. And I thought the two systems were like opposed to each other. So you would use Libre NMS or VictoriaMetrics, and we'll get into more details later. But I found out there's like a really pretty easy integration to set up between the two. So I'm like really frustrated and kicking myself. Like, why didn't I just like do the Google search before to see if there was a integration between the two instead of like finding out, what is it, 2 or 3 months down the road that, oh, hey, you can just run both systems in parallel and like kind of A/B test them together rather than have to like set something up completely in parallel.
Well, at least you found that before you got all the way down that build process and making something work, right? But I think that's hopefully where shows like our Tech Talk here can help. Is there's so much happening out there in this whole space of observability and networking that any one person trying to stay on top of it themselves is really, really hard, right? So I think it's kind of fun to be able to get feedback from you from out there, what you've experienced, and you can share some of those that hopefully people don't, now they know. So right on.
Yeah. And one thing that Libre NMS did help me on was for that same conference. We were monitoring the network interfaces at Southeast Linux Fest. They were cool enough to let us do that. And they had a bunch of 10 gig interfaces that were showing as 4.3 gigabit per second. And that's when I found out SNMP counters have a 32 and a 64-bit metric.
And SNMP, honestly, it sounds like some cryptic government agency, at least the people who aren't in the know. I think everybody on here that we're going to be listening to this is likely to know SNMP, but you have just a real quick, what the heck is this? Because it sounds to me like it's like an old VCR remote control or something, right? Like it has information it can go, but it's not made for humans. Or I'm sorry, you go ahead and say it. I'm trying to guess.
Yeah. So it has one too many letters to be a government agency, at least for the Americans in the audience. All of our agencies have 3 letters. So yeah, SNMP is simple network management protocol. So it can do monitoring stuff, but you can also like issue commands over it if you have it configured correctly. So that way, instead of having to like manually access each switch, you can just send SNMP packets out to control the devices.
So it sounds
There's
perfect.
actually
You
one
don't need to
story I
know,
heard
then you
where
don't need to do anything beyond SNMP, then it's perfect, right?
I didn't go that far. Yeah, so SNMP is pretty ubiquitous on networking equipment, but kind of the challenge is that it's not great to use outside of networking equipment. And SNMP, we did some digging during the research for this, and we found out that it's older than me. So SNMP is from the 80s, and although it's gotten better over the years, like now there's been encryption added and everything. Digging through some of the documentation, especially if you want to do like custom applications, can get pretty rough. So if that's all you have, that's great, and we can work with that. But as time has gone on, we've gotten better at collecting telemetry. So we're going to start with SNMP, and then we'll start getting into like more modern or newer ways of collecting telemetry off of network machines and explain why they're better than SNMP.
So quick question on that one, just out of the lifespan of like protocols and technologies like this, like SNMP, you say it's been out for, let's say, 35 plus years. At some point it becomes really stable and ubiquitous and it's working well. And is it missing anything now? Like, is it still servicing its good point, but new things need to be done around it, or are the new things actually can replace it? Like, do you still need SNMP? Is the using less words? That's the question.
Yeah, you can start phasing it out depending on the networking equipment you have. So there's some like software defined networks like Ubiquiti or like TP-Link Omada where you manage everything through a controller and you can collect telemetry from the controller, and it's a bit more detailed than SNMP. And there's also things like gNMI, which lets you have a more well-defined spec, and the things are going to be plain text. My biggest issue with SNMP was just like trying to poke around and figure out what things are. I had to use SNMP specific tools like SNMP walk. And then if SNMP walk didn't look up like what the human readable metric name was, you just get like MIB 1.2.3.4 or whatever. And then you have to go through and scour the internet to find documentation. Whereas most other protocols, so like we'll pick on Prometheus style metrics, the metric names are like human readable by default, and they go over HTTP. And if you're like an SRE or a developer, you're probably at least a little bit familiar with like curl and grep, and it's easier to walk through that rather than use SNMP walk.
Makes perfect sense. So to me, again, it's just kind of thinking about the history of this. Is like SNMP at the time it was created, there probably were so few variables or metrics that people would be doing that human readable it wasn't needed at the time. But with these modern applications and you get into serverless, all this, we've got so much more stuff that all of a sudden, yeah, it has to be human readable or you're really stuck, right?
Yep.
Sounds like a problem. So how do you address that?
Make it someone else's problem. So that's going back to the Libre NMS thing. Let me put my screen on stage. I started playing with Libre NMS. So initially what I did was I had used Telegraf and looked at some other open source collectors to try to grab SNMP data. But I ran into the challenge again of like, it's challenging to correlate like SNMP tables and get everything organized correctly for interfaces, because like the Telegraf collector just doesn't scrape everything off of a switch and tie it all together and spit it out into VictoriaMetrics. That's kind of an exercise for the user to figure out. Whereas Libre NMS, I just put in, here's my SNMP credentials, and I was able to get like the interface statistics right away. So even it took me maybe an hour or so to get SNMP running, and that wasn't even inside of a container. I found, again, Google search would have saved me a bit of time. I found the Docker containers for Libre NMS after I had gone through and like manually set up PHP FPM to do it.
Well, now the lesson learned, right? Now you have one more container you need.
Yep. So here we can just like go into an individual switch and we can see all of the interfaces using RRD. But I have more than just switches on my network, which is an SNMP can get individual server statistics, but the tooling for things like node exporter or other ways of collecting like host or application metrics are going to be much better supported, especially if you have like custom application metrics. So what you can do is you can set up Libre NMS to talk to VictoriaMetrics and then visualize it with the rest of your data. So here we can see a similar graph where we took the same metric out of Libre NMS, and instead of using the built-in RRD tool in Libre NMS to do it, you can use, you can tell Libre NMS, hey, here's a influx compatible remote write endpoint, and say, shoot off all the metrics to that influx compatible endpoint. And then you have it here in Libre NMS as well.
Okay, so yeah, you can, and this is not just in nicer visualizations, but obviously it's making like correlation and finding things that much easier as well, right?
Yep. And the nice thing is with this approach is that I've seen a lot of enterprises and big companies struggle when they have like an SNMP based thing and a time series database metric solution. Like migrating between the two can kind of be rough. And the nice approach with this is you can have both systems running in parallel at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, if you want like developers that are using open telemetry or sending data via Prometheus exporters, they can view this data in the tools they're comfortable with, and your network admins can continue to use LibreNMS. And you also kind of get a shortcut through having to look up what all the MIBs mean and correlate it. So along with seeing the uptime for everything, we can see the interface statistics from here. And we could also see the error rates for packets as well. And this is big enough for everyone to see, right?
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I had the wrong glasses on and I was too far back. So that's why all of a sudden everybody got a close up of my eyes there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is possible to do everything. This is my attempt at getting SNMP data using Telegraf. And it's fairly similar data. You can see the packets per second and the bandwidth per interface, just like we can. One thing I need to figure out in LibreNMS is how to get the interface status. So that's one thing I need to figure out. But otherwise, it is possible to get SNMP in VictoriaMetrics. So if that's something you're familiar with, we can support.
Yeah. Would there be any benefit too from just a performance or a resource perspective too? I'd imagine if SNMP was designed 35 plus years ago, the amount of storage and the need for being performant was very different than it would be today. Like if you've got a complex network collecting lots of SNMP, it's going into something that's not Victoria logs or VictoriaMetrics. It's going into whatever was used before. Is there a potential to get faster results if you want to look over historic data by pushing your SNMP data into something like VictoriaMetrics?
Yes. So LibreNMS is using RRD tool, which is a older way of drawing graphs, and VictoriaMetrics has the better ability of storing data for a longer period of time. And the other cool part about VictoriaMetrics is we have downsampling and retention filters as well. So downsampling will basically break your data up into windows, and then it'll just grab the most recent sample from that window. So over time, you don't need as granular of data, so you can get some hard drive space back just by cutting out metrics. So if you're collecting one sample every minute, after a week, you can drop that down to like one sample every 5 minutes, and you get a decent amount of hard drive space back.
Well, that's good too. And it sounds like if somebody's monitoring network for these sort of things, they want to keep everything clean and tidy. The less rubbish moving around too, the better.
Yeah. Everybody wants like 1 second resolution for everything until they get the bill or like see the disk space usage. And you're like,
yeah,
maybe we can downsample this a little bit later. So yeah, that's SNMP. I did find that I have TP-Link Omada equipment in my house, and actually I kind of walked past one of your questions. Is there a benefit to using like a more modern telemetry collection versus SNMP? It depends. I have to give the solutions engineer answer there. So if you're probing SNMP, that obviously like you're querying a device and getting telemetry back from it that has some load attached to it. Mm-hmm. Some of the other telemetry collection methods, you're asking the controller rather than the individual devices. So there's some performance benefit there. But I have heard from one of my friends that's a full-time network admin that the reason why SNMP is sticking around is because it's mature. They figured out security fairly well, and that's kind of like a known thing.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the newer protocols are HTTP based, and there's a lot of vulnerabilities from like open source and proprietary networking equipment, and their HTTP implementations.
Okay. That's interesting. The reason for my little silence and rubbing my ever going white beard I see in the screen here, that is terrible. Yeah, I think that's just, it opens up that vector for risk. But it's sort of, I guess you've got to factor in that. Do I want to use the trusted, true, antiquated technology that's secure because it doesn't do what I need it to do? Or do I make sure that I'm using a modern tool and put security best practices in place?
Yeah. One other benefit of SNMP is that a lot of the common things have a standard name. So it's similar to like semantic convention and open telemetry, where a Cisco switch is going to use the same metric name for like bandwidth over time or something like that. Then TP-Link, Omada, and UniFi, if you use SNMP, the metric name and labeling for the interface statistics are going to be the same. Whereas we still have the same like interface statistics here, but we're getting it by device instead of by port name, and it's going to have like Omada underscore something for the metric name rather than the standard SNMP name.
Not to point out anything on your screen, but you have one of the busiest and most organized home networks that I think I've seen in a long time. Just that's it's pretty impressive, man. I feel like I need to step myself up here a little bit. It's just a little behind the scenes stuff. I'm trying to redo my overall networking and topology at home, and Matthias has been guiding me through a fairly affordable process. And maybe we'll document that at some point of just like taking a crazy network from poor design to best implementation. And maybe I'll have something like this to show one day.
Yeah, we might be able to squeeze UniFi. You're going UniFi for that, right?
That's right.
We might be able to squeeze UniFi into like the internal platform setup. We can pretend you're the crotchety old networking team.
Perfect. I'm crotchety and old. Just don't put me near the networking. Perfect.
Yeah. So one of the cool things, this is the TP-Link exporter that's available on GitHub. And the nice thing about this was I just put up the Go binary and fed it my API credentials for my TP-Link Omada controller. And then I got more detailed information than I got from SNMP with much less effort. I spun up a Go binary and set up a scrape job, and I was able to get more detailed information than I was out of Libre NMS or just trying to figure out SNMP by myself. And there's similar things for when you go with UniFi, it'll be a good excuse for me to play with uPolar, which is the same idea for UniFi. So you feed it the API credentials, you set up a scrape job, and then you're able to grab that information and put it into VictoriaMetrics rather than have to go through the exercise of figuring out what all the SNMP MIBs mean.
Perfect. So you all heard it here first. I'm getting a seasoned network designer and admin for $0.
Seasoned, but I didn't say if I was good or not. The other thing too is that Libre NMS does support Syslog, but it is using MySQL to host all that. So kind of getting into our next category is network, getting some network logging as well. Mm-hmm. MySQL is a great database. So before I get in and say all the reasons why you shouldn't put logs in there, I'm not saying that it's a bad database. I'm saying it's a bad database for storing logs. Because it's designed for like storing transactions and like user profiles, and it's a different use case.
Yeah, I was with the MySQL team early in the days, long before Oracle or really any of the products coming out. And yeah, you're right. It's really good for what it should be used for, but people try to use it for everything, and it can be problematic. So
yeah. And Alexander, our CTO, actually does a talk that goes more into depth. But as you scale up, you're going to run into challenges using MySQL for logging. And so having a separate tool like Victoria Logs is going to be a much better home for forwarding Syslog. And that is also another integration you can set up from Libre NMS is to say, hey, grab everything from Syslog that you are collecting and forward it to us. So the two can still play nice there. But as you scale, you're going to need a more specialized database for storing logs.
Yeah, for sure. Because query results are going to be like speed of queries and return results is going to be everything in that space, right? Because if you're collecting all of this telemetry data and you're trying to do a search and a full text search across this, and it's not indexed or designed for performant search, it wouldn't be fun to run a dashboard off of a non-optimized database for something like this, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. So this next dashboard is using Suricata. So Suricata initially started out as an intrusion detection system. Yeah. So what it does is it will sniff all the packets and then try to figure out what's going on the network. This used to be super useful because pretty much all network traffic was unencrypted. So you could see not only just like the source IP, destination IP, source port, and destination port, but you could see the entire contents of like HTTP requests, or like basically read the email off of the wire to detect for bad behavior. But as things have gotten encrypted, you either have to put a certificate on every device, and basically, if you think about it like a package, you have to open up the package, inspect the package, and then put it back together and send it off. Or you have to just rely on like, this box has a funny shape or looks suspicious.
Okay, yeah, so not ideal. So it would be either not super effective, or to make it really effective, it sounds like it would be extremely resource and time costly.
Correct.
And security risk too, if I'm that check at some point, right? So
yeah. Also, there's just like a technical burden to it. Another war story would be back in the day, I worked as an IT manager at a manufacturing company, and they started self-hosting. They went to a more modern chat system that actually worked on a cell phone, but it was hosted internally, and I didn't know about DNS challenges and Let's Encrypt yet. So every time somebody wanted the chat up on their phone, I had to put the certificate on their phone, and it would
for
be
every new chat, or just once, first time.
Yeah, so it was only the important people, or like the higher ups, that got chat on their phone, because it was such a hassle to put certificates. And if you want to do full packet decryption, you have to go through a similar exercise where you have to put the certificate authority that will decrypt everything and then re-encrypt it.
It'd be quicker to just print the messages out and hand deliver them. So yeah, exactly. Sometimes. Well, and I think that's the fun part of these, right? Is the idea to do something, deploy, because it's got it solves a problem that there is, but sometimes we just forget to see what are those ripple effects that are going to be a pain in the butt, and mitigate or eliminate all of the value of that effort.
Yeah, so that's how Suricata got its start, but because it was already sniffing all the packets, we found out that we could use it for flow data as well. So flow.
Yeah. I'm curious. I want to dive into if you could explain what flow data is, and just sort of the distinction between what flow is, and it's not like just a metric, right? Like in my mind, metric's like a speedo in your car. It tells you what you're doing right now. And then your odometer sort of, or your it tells you how, just basically logs your car, like your GPS tracks where I went, how fast I went, and flow is putting it all. That's the net flow. Would that be right? Like speedometer is what's happening
now. To help flesh out that analogy better, you're describing the difference between logs and metrics. So metrics are for describing the state of the system at a given time. Yep. So a metric would be how fast is the car going right now, and then a log would be an event. So that would be like, Mark pressed the brake at this time,
and then
push the brake this hard.
And the flow is all of in between, or where, if you had to fit flow, what is flow?
So
could it be in that
flow
analogy?
Data would be an event of so like right now we can go through and look at the Omada dashboard and say that the Pixel 8 was sending 5.5 megabytes a second of traffic at 9:43 a.m. Mm-hmm. That would be the metric, or the equivalent of the gauge. And then if we wanted to, we could in Suricata say that, let's pop out Explore here so we can get the full logs.
So we're going to be able to drill right into what's the log that metric is specific to. Okay.
Yep. So do tags.appname.suricata. So here we can see this would be like the equivalent of an event where we went to Cloudflare's DNS server and it was DNS traffic. So all this detailed information about whether or not it was able to pick up the protocol name, what IP address and what port, and when something happened, that would be a log. So NetFlow, because you're saying this many packets, this much data went over the network at this time, that's an event. Especially for the way the data is stored in VictoriaMetrics, NetFlow is terrible because the number of unique IP addresses in a network would just be like, would that be stats by fields Dest
So if
IP.
I'm getting this right, so then in this driving analogy and car telemetry data, then the equivalent of net flow or an event would be what happened around a red light. So the car decelerated, the car came to zero, and then the car went. So that I'm looking at that event is this period of time. This metric,
Yeah.
I showed zero miles an hour. That's a metric. I dove into that metric to see what was happening around there, why it was 0 miles an hour. And I see an event of deceleration because it's coming to a red light. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have all these different IP addresses. And if you try to store each one of those as a metric, you would have what's called a cardinality explosion.
Yep. And that doesn't sound good.
Correct. So a cardinality explosion is when you have a ton of different label values going into the database at a specific time. Okay. So all time series databases, including VictoriaMetrics, I shouldn't say all, most time series databases, including VictoriaMetrics, they optimize for having the same set of metadata or like the same set of key value pairs, sending data to a database at a time, because you're just tracking the state of the system, not details about every transactions going through the system. So you would design the database differently if you wanted to optimize for things like tracking each event that goes through a system rather than just the state of this thing at this time was this.
Wait a minute. It sounds like you're saying picking the right tools for the job and planning is important.
Yes.
It's spot on. I think that's it. Every time I have a piece of software that I really like and somebody says, oh, it's garbage. Like when I used to work at MySQL, people are like, I don't like MySQL. I want Postgres. MySQL is rubbish. My apps never work. And I'm like, Facebook works. It's like, it's the way you deployed it and chose it, right? A tool's only as good as the person whose hands it's in and if it's doing the right job. So yeah.
Because what is it? Facebook, YouTube, and WordPress are all MySQL, and that's like how much of the internet?
Yeah, but arguably on the other side of that is like thinking now if Facebook was being started today or YouTube was being started today, would that be their first choice in database? I don't know. There's a lot has changed, but at that time it certainly wasn't. It clearly carried them to this point. So yeah.
So the nice thing we can do, we went on a database tangent there.
Yes, yeah, that's what we do. So, walk down the path with us, everyone.
Yeah, so that was the nonsense section. So now that we're back to here, one of the cool things about Victoria logs is that we can use the stats pipe to turn that stream of events into metrics. And if we wanted to store those for an extended period of time, we can use recording rules for that, or we can just query the logs directly like this. The reason why you would want to summarize things as a metric is that if it's low cardinality, it's going to be cheaper to store over time. So it is possible to store logs for an extended period of time, but no matter how efficient the database is, you're just storing so many details.
Yeah. But question for you, when you say if it's low cardinality, that sounds like it's a relative statement. Like when you're saying that, how would somebody quantify or qualify what low would be in that?
So the way we do that is we have tools inside of VMUI. Actually, I'll use the public URL.
By the way, whatever keyboard you're using, those key clicks sound quite nice. It's actually, yeah, I'm not being facetious. It's not overpowering.
I switched to red switches.
Okay.
That was the secret. Before I was using blue switches, I go back and listen to like some of the demos I gave before. I'm just like, oh God.
I've gone with brown on my current keyboard for this, but yeah, I've got some loud ones on another keyboard that is not nice.
Not safe for work in a different way.
Yeah.
So back to cardinality, the way we measure it is the number of unique time series, and inside of every VictoriaMetrics single and every VM select, we have the cardinality explorer, and that is how you would measure it. So again, it is relative. So if you're very resource constrained or budget constrained, you might want to keep it to like 10 or more labels is going to become problematic. But if you're a big enterprise and you're willing to throw resources at the problem, having 30 or 40 labels is something you can tolerate. It's just, again, because you have so much more metadata, you're going to have to pay for that in hard drive space.
Okay, so it just sounds like it's
because you're searching through more stuff.
So it sounds like it could be a variable that doesn't get taken into account a lot when people are planning some systems, right? Like I mean, maybe it does, but I wouldn't have thought about what would my version of high cardinality be? What would the cost be, and what am I willing to spend on it? Sounds like you could get, if you don't think about that up front, it sounds like it could be something that could sting you in 2 years down the road when the guy who first built your system is moved on, and now you're going, this is expensive, and what do I do?
Yeah, he left the company before the bill came. Yeah, and some defaults do favor high cardinality because most people only need like a subset of the metrics, but you don't know which subset you need in advance. And we do provide tools like relabeling rules and stream aggregation that Roman and the two of us went over in a previous tech talk, or wasn't a tech talk, it was something else. We had reviewed like how you can reduce cardinality using these tools, so that way you're only storing the things that are important to you.
Yeah. So I don't want to dive in. I don't want to hammer on this too much, but it really sounds like there is, no matter how great the tools are, getting access to some of the tribal knowledge through community or through whatever is super important, right? It's kind of, if the thing that's sticking in my head, I can't get off these car analogies today. I apologize, everyone. I was up all night with a fever, so this might be fever dreams. But I'm thinking of like any good tool like ours or anything else is like an F1 car is awesome on a track, but you need the right skills to pilot it. Right. If my mom hopped in an F1 car, it's not an amazing car. But if you put in, anybody, so it is really about, these are great tools, but tapping into the experience of the experts. And thanks for sharing this stuff, Matthias, I think is what can make a real big difference.
Yeah. The way I like to think about it is our enterprise features are insanely cool, but the best enterprise feature is like a high level of access to our support engineers who have probably seen crazier things than what you're dealing with, or have seen things just as crazy as you're dealing with multiple times.
Yeah. Well, that's support for our enterprise customers, of course, but like we've got tons of millions of awesome users that are using the same open source version because they're both the same, but they can also get access to this type of expert level help through our community and community Slack as well, right? So it's, we obviously, our team, as we like to be, that we think we're really, really good at support and helping people in knowledge, but our community is bang up. So I just want to make sure that nobody thinks we're here to just tell you that you should be paying for support. If it's a fit, do it, but else community is awesome.
Yeah. Our community is awesome and fairly responsive, but if you need like this thing needs to be fixed right now, that's where the benefit of enterprise shows.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. So the other cool thing that we can do with logs is, so Suricata is called a network intrusion-based system, and it could use that to generate flow data. It's also handier than doing it on the firewall in some cases. So Suricata can tap into a network switch. You can basically create a port mirror, which says, hey, take everything you see, shove it out of this interface, and Suricata can analyze that as well. So, for example, if you're sending network traffic from something on the same network from one port on a switch to another, the router is not going to see that. So that's another cool thing that Suricata can do. And it can do network-based intrusion detection. But like I said, over time, as things became more encrypted, that became less of a useful tool. So another thing that we compare this with is tools like CrowdSec and Fail2Ban, which are log-based.
Cool. So this is combining, this is stacking these layers on there. Like, are you taking advantage of, this is CrowdSec, but is Zeek being leveraged in any of this, or?
Zeek, I didn't have time to set up. I was happy with CrowdSec, and
Oh yeah. Sorry, I meant Suricata. Again, my fever brain is just melting. I'm sorry, dude.
You're good. Just to touch on Zeek really quick though. So Zeek is, it is just a network analysis tool. It doesn't have the ability to take action on things. So Suricata, you can run it in intrusion detection or IDS mode. And what that will do is it will just analyze the traffic going through the network and generate logs of things. And you can download rules from the internet that will say, hey, this traffic pattern looks suspicious, and you can log that as well. But Suricata also has the ability to do intrusion prevention. So that would be basically, it would hook into the firewall that Suricata is running on and say, hey, I saw suspicious traffic from this IP, log that, and then make a firewall rule to prevent that from happening.
Okay. Yep. So automating that helps. So
Yeah. But again, because more traffic's encrypted and because sometimes we might not want to ban people, we're going to look more now at tools like fail to ban and CrowdSec. So fail to ban is a tool that just runs on your machine and looks at the logs running on that machine to detect things like SSH brute forcing. And then it can do something similar where it detects something bad and then creates a local firewall rule. But we live in a world now where everything doesn't live on one server. We live in a world of distributed systems.
yeah, yeah, and I think that fail to ban sounds like a good idea. But then if you were in any real complicated environment, I can just imagine the administrative nightmare. Though, if I have to deploy to machine, if there's updates, if there's version consistencies, like it sounds like it could be. I mean, a great tool, but I could just see where it could cause some troubles if it's on device versus centralized.
Yeah. So what I use instead of fail to ban now is a tool called CrowdSec, which takes that idea of fail to ban, but it decouples the blocking action and the collection. And it has more sophisticated means of doing both. So in my setup, because I only have a relatively small number of machines and I don't have to cross team boundaries like I would inside of a large enterprise, where I, as the networking team or the security team, have to ask the application team to put an agent on all of their stuff,
Yep.
which becomes a bureaucratic nightmare in some cases. I'm able to just install the agent and collect and have it read the logs locally, like I would with fail to ban. But Zahar, one of our engineers, actually contributed a plugin for CrowdSec that lets you use Victoria logs as the source.
That's awesome.
So if you just do your normal log collection, you can take advantage of all the value that CrowdSec adds just by running one agent attached to a logging database, rather than having to push it everywhere and spend an extra. It's only 100 megs of RAM and minimal CPU, but if you've ever worked on any sort of observability or security team, people will throw agents under the bus in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah, yeah, they're just it's the age-old thing, right? Is if I don't let you put anything on this machine, the machine can be secure. The moment you put anything, an operating system, a BIOS on it, it's a problem. So yeah, people don't want anything installed, even though if it can keep them secure. And I think this is really interesting too, because is my thought, and I've worked with orgs before where we had, official SIEMs that we would sell and these solutions, and they're complex and they're amazing. And they've got all these great things that SecOps teams need. But I think a lot of times SREs and even developers getting to know what's happening from a security standpoint in your applications and environment outside of what the SOC or NOC is doing can be helpful too. So you get a better understanding. And this looks like something, like you say, that you can deploy fairly easily as another viewpoint. Right?
Even doing the troglodyte way that I'm doing it, where I deploy the agent on every machine that's public facing, it's just a CrowdSec's written in Go, so it's fairly portable. And they do a decent job of packaging too. So you can use the shell script, or I wrote an Ansible rule to roll it out in like an afternoon.
So question here from the peanut gallery. I'm looking at top countries. You've got Lithuania and Bulgaria are way up there. What's going on?
I don't know who I made angry.
So even if you look on your right-hand side in the next chart over underneath the pie chart, look at you. 14. Now, why is 14 higher than 10 and it's not above it in that sort order?
Because the person who made this dashboard needs to get fired and didn't sort it.
I'm sorry. I honestly, that was a real question. I didn't know if you were like, well, because this is my primary focus. Like, you could have just made up a reason why it was like that. And I would have went, you're brilliant.
No, I just didn't sort it.
Okay. Right. Perfect.
Yeah. So that was easy. The other cool thing about CrowdSec is that it has more sophisticated bouncer behavior. So bouncers is their way of mitigating a bad actor. So in fail to ban, and the way I use it today, I just have it create a firewall rule on the machine and say, hey, block this thing.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing about CrowdSec is that if you send telemetry to them, they'll give you some access to their IP list as well. So you can kind of get some sort of herd immunity from it. So that way, if you share your information, other people will share their information with you, and you get nice IP lists that block everything for you.
Okay. And when you're saying that, again, I'm not trying to sell their solution here, but I have a question that sounds like I am. So then you're sharing probably very benign information and you're getting valuable information. If that's what somebody's calculation is, right? You're not sending anything scary or sensitive when you're
Yeah,
sharing.
you're telling the world somebody tried to break into your house essentially,
Yeah.
or your
Perfect.
business, depending on how you're using it. So if you just say, hey, I saw this IP address perform this behavior on your machine, if you're comfortable disclosing that,
Yep.
then you can get access to a really well-tested set of IP lists.
Yeah. I love pew pew charts. Like I like to be able to see those heat maps over where things are. Like to me, that's the fact that you can just have that happen really quick is really,
Yeah.
it impresses me. I love it.
The events are fairly human readable as well.
Which is a big difference, right? So you can go in and start to drill down and actually understand what's happening.
Yes. And the other nice thing too is that, so say you accidentally ban like a university IP or something like that, there's, along with the firewall bouncer, there's other things like the Cloudflare bouncer, or I think the WordPress one can do this too, where instead of outright banning you, it'll scrutinize your request more. So it'll make you like go through a CAPTCHA or something like that.
Yep.
So that way, if you don't want to outright ban people, you still want your service to be accessible, you just want to be a bit more careful about those IPs.
Is that similar to like that same process that we were talking the other day, just in a one-on-one chat, and it was about the queuing system, like I was mentioning, where I would click a link from Blue Sky and it would put me into where I see the Cloudflare and a little logo, click here. And that was like either queuing or more intensive interrogation by Cloudflare, you think, on that side, because there might have been detected a lot of activity, say in that situation, somebody posted a social media link to a small local newspaper and they started getting hit hard because of requests. Is that something that could have popped up and why I was seeing that CAPTCHA or queue?
So there's two possibilities there. There's kind of two products you could have walked into. One of them could have been like Turnstile or their CAPTCHA system, where it's verifying that you are not a robot by running some JavaScript in your browser that's expensive or impossible for a bot to run. They also have something called waiting room, where if like they're getting slash dotted, they'll just queue you. So I'd have to see the webpage, but I can't tell you right now.
Point of concern, I'm going to go off the zone for a minute. So you're saying CAPTCHA proves that I'm not a robot. So when I fail clicking on all boxes that have a crosswalk and I fail, does that mean I'm a robot? Has my childhood dream come true and I'm actually a robot now, Matthias?
We don't cover philosophy on this show.
Okay. That's Matthias and Mark After Dark on our podcast. All right. Sorry. Let's go.
But yeah, like you were saying before, it is nice to be able to have SREs or like developers have access to this network security information, because if I accidentally get my IP address banned by like running some load test or something like that, me being able to go to like the going through the IDS logs as the developer SRE without having to bother the network team and be while I'm angry about it.
Yeah.
I could going to somebody with evidence and being like, hey, look, my IP's blocked, versus like immediately blaming somebody is a different conversation entirely.
This sounds like it wasn't just an example pulled out of the air, Matthias. I'm detecting some trauma from that.
I don't want to talk about it.
That's a gain for Matthias and Mark After Dark. Subscribe now.
But being able to go through and see like what IP addresses are actually getting blocked and having easy access to that as a non-security person is super helpful. Because all the SIM stuff is really just a niche case of observability, and it's just interrogating the same data slightly differently.
Well, could you also argue that from a DevSecOps standpoint too? If you're, I guess this gets into more development than SREs, but I was thinking like if you're in DevSecOps or if you're a DevOps person and you're testing some code, if you can run it through and see what's happening from a security standpoint before you push it into production or even get it over to your security team for authorization, it gives a chance to try to knock off some of the easy to find offenders that the security team could just say no on, do a rejection. So I think that's, because I know I've had a lot of stuff when it gets to security, it can sit in there and it can be rejected for any known reason. So if you can take a look at it from a security lens, from the developer SRE standpoint, that might make the probability of being approved by security might go up. That's just dream.
If you can go through like this and actually show whether or not traffic is getting through. So I was playing with Victoria traces recently, and I was instrumenting my matrix server. And right now you can see that you're going through the traffic reverse proxy and going through the endpoint, and you're getting all the database calls. But I wasn't sure when basically everything from here down wasn't getting attached to the trace, if it was a skill issue because networking was misconfigured, or if I didn't have telemetry collection and matrix set up properly, Synapse technically, but. And so it was really handy to be able to go through and actually see that, yes, there was traffic flowing. And that helped me not have to figure out how to craft a bogus open telemetry request in order to figure out if traffic was working or not. And especially if you're in the world of containers, it's kind of a bad practice to like shell into the container and like run curl commands. And a lot of times it's best practice to use like scratch images or very minimal images that don't have those troubleshooting tools in it. So if you're in a containerized world or a distributed systems world, it's going to be much easier to go through the logs and go, oh, hey, I can see this, everything about this HTTP request flowing through here.
Yeah. See, these are the gems I love, is where it's like what actually helps me, the guy, type it on the keyboard, or the person type it on the keyboard, right? It's like, I'm sure that you could tie it to, somebody, if you needed to tie it to a business value or some other thing, but in the end, right? If anybody who's listening or now live or down the road is like this, these are the things that can make your day better, right? If you can solve a problem faster, that's just like, now you can get on to the next problem, which is maybe not ideal, but it's, yeah.
And in this case, I wouldn't have to bother a network engineer to figure out that my traffic wasn't blocked, because I can use my generic skill of searching through structured logs to figure that out. And if it's not being blocked, I don't have to bother the network person. But I can just go, oh, it's a skill issue on my end.
So does the combative nature between networking and SREs or developers still exist? Last time I was in that world, it was like two separate camps. And in my mind, I was thinking, yeah, if I solved that problem before as a developer, I would have made sure that I let the network people know that we got it. Like it seemed it was always like that competition, right? My old days of, yeah, your network sucks. Well, your application sucks. So,
as a solutions engineer, I'm obligated to answer every question as it depends. So it depends on the size of company. Like smaller companies, because the organization can get away with being flatter, because you don't have to like create as many boundaries, because if you get too many humans in the same room, it just goes nuts. At larger company, there's still silos and barriers. I wouldn't say it's hostile.
Okay.
I didn't see network and development teams chucking each other under the bus inside of large companies recently.
Yeah.
It's just more of getting somebody on another team to help you is challenging. Like crossing that team boundary inside of an organization is rough.
Yeah. And I guess those worlds are really like their Venn diagram is getting closer and more overlapping, right? With software defined networks, with infrastructure as code. Like there's a lot more now where I'm sure there's gray area of, well, that's both, right? So I can imagine the collaboration and skill sets have to go up. Like I'm sure anybody in that space now, you've got infinite amount of learning.
Yeah. I wonder if the only difference between like somebody in an SRE and an infrastructure as code setup and a developer is a file extension at this point.
Yeah. And one of those titles probably comes with a company that sprinkles more money, even they do the same job, right?
Yeah. So I do jujitsu, and there's a quote that a black belt only covers 2 inches of your butt, and it's up to you to cover the rest. I feel like that with job titles too. Like you actually have to have skills. Your job title is just kind of like a label.
I love it. Oh, we'll dig into that one. Well, that's awesome. Well, what else? Get back on here. What else did we want to cover today in the test? I know we've taken a lot of meandering different paths and that, but that tends to happen when you and I get all these calls. We try to cover the topic, but we're going to digress. So yeah, come with us for that walk.
I like showing metrics and logs playing nice together. So this is an application called Blocky, which is a DNS sinkhole. So it basically answers DNS queries wrong. So if you wanted to like prevent your kids from going to gambling websites or other inappropriate content or at work, those things are also not okay to do during work hours. It could also be used for security. So if there's been domains that are known to serve malware, Blocky or Pi-hole or AdGuard Home will download a list of known bad domains. And then instead of resolving that DNS query properly and returning an IP address, it'll just return 0.0.0.0.
Okay.
So that way the request doesn't resolve and whatever the inappropriate content is doesn't get loaded on your network.
Does it have to resolve to 0.0.0.0? Because I remember on my old original OpenWRT, we used to have the one that if they hit those, it would just redirect to a picture of a kitten. Right. So anybody was on the list. Yeah. Okay. I was just wondering if it was the same idea. Like that was just a olden days proxy out there. So this now is, but off the DNS level is probably even just faster to just put it to 0, right?
So you can still have that same workflow with the DNS filter, where basically you would just have it go to, instead of 0.0.0.0, have it go to an address that has a web server where no matter what, it just serves a picture of a kitten.
Okay. So that's the fun for the man in the middle attacks at Starbucks. Okay.
Yeah. So here we can track like response times. We can track the request rate and how well requests are getting cached.
Yeah.
And all of that is served as metrics. And if we wanted to, we can drill into the individual logs so we can see either inside of the format directly or as a pretty table to see which hosts are querying what domains and what the response are, and if any errors are occurring as well. So we can filter out the types of DNS queries. We can filter out errored requests or blocked requests to see if anybody is going to an inappropriate domain. Are they just loading advertisements that are associated with the page and you don't want that to happen? Or if somebody's actually trying to do something inappropriate during work hours.
Yeah. See, that correlation between, a metric or a status and then being able to get into these logs. I mean, this is the only way to solve it, right? Because with just a metric, you wouldn't know what you're solving. And with just the logs, you'd have to read an infinite amount of data to try to figure it out, right? This is when I love it, when it all comes together like this.
Yeah. Or you can track the error rate when your router is failing, which was a current use case for me was just like randomly in 5-minute intervals, I'd see a spike in errors and I was able to figure that out, that was a network error and not something wrong on somebody's client device.
I can only imagine your household network requests and queue that you host on Friday afternoons for comments and suggestions.
Man, dude, the wild thing though is like kids are the most savage users I've ever had.
I know.
You break the internet doing the Super Bowl, and it is a more detailed and in-depth explanation, and I got raked over the coals worse than when I took down a bank website on a Friday.
Hey, I took down a bank's email systems, but it was on a Wednesday, not a Friday once. So you one-up me with whoopsing banks. Cool. Yeah.
So similar story with Key, we can see whether or not things are getting IP addresses or not, and we can detect the number of like error requests and things as well. So it's nice that you can use the same like application level observability flow as you can for network observability flows, and everybody's kind of singing off of the same sheet of music. Because most incidents don't care about boundaries that you have inside of your company. So the more people are able to look at the same data in the same way, the easier incidents are going to be.
That's awesome. Yep.
I think I covered all the networking. We could cover just like, hey, we can get nftables logs. Do we want to go over that really quick?
Well, we've only got 7 minutes left. Let's just hold on, because I kind of want to just do like a recap of what we covered and sort of talk about, if for people that are interested in this, let's do it. I want to cover that later. And the reason why I want to cover that for everyone listening to is, again, not to keep saying that I'm old and old to use old technology, but when Matthias and I first started talking about this, I was like, yeah, IP tables, IP chains. That's the last time I was mucking in a firewall. And when he started talking about tables and that, I was like, I've got a lot to learn. So that's part of my home network journey. So I think we're going to cover some of that, Matthias, when we do building a corporate style network for a Muppet at home will be what we'll cover with me, if that's all right.
Okay.
Okay. So
that's actually going to be like the next 6 months probably of these tech talks is going through and building out a platform soup to nuts. So
Yeah.
from installing VictoriaMetrics, from talking to a networking team, to talking to an application team, to talking to people who love open telemetry.
Yeah. So it's going to get really much more, I think, for the next couple of months for sure. Is going to get a lot more hands-on. We are going to dive way deeper into the technology on some of these. And then we'll probably have things to be sharing, so you can grab and download things and experiment and go along with us and go through that platform building journey if you want. So that's going to be super exciting. So today, to wrap it up, we really talked about old versus new and how you're going to have old and new in most environments, right? As far as SNMPs and bringing in different data sets, like it's telemetry is different, but you're going to have the old stuff. You covered the sort of the silo problem where you've got different information when you're not correlating it like this into one system, where you've just got 20 tabs open. And I think you actually were going to take a look and see how many Firefox requests you had running in yours, because that's the sort of what we had to, right? Is get tons of tabs, and then you've got to remember where they are and going across. So it's like siloing it just doesn't work. But what Matthias showed today was how to take all of those different silos, and the easiest way to glue them together and actually get actionable data out of those, which was really cool. We all covered the difference between logs, metrics, and flow, which for me was helpful to go through and to give my analogy and then have you tune that a little bit was super important, because those three go together so critically for observability. Again, if you have an error in your logs and you can't look at the flow, you're a bit lost, or any one of those components, you can be a bit lost. And what I quite like too is sort of the data for defense that we talked about, right? Security is obviously, I think, interesting to most of us in the tech space, and being able to just see how we can incorporate all of this different data to be able to visualize and surface interesting security information, even if we're not security folks. So yeah, I think did we cover anything else, or did I summarize that all right, Matthias?
I don't think you missed anything, but we do need to remind the people how to get a hold of us.
How is that?
So feel free to check out our GitHub, where you can download all the VictoriaMetrics binaries. Mark has actually been doing a ton of work getting our Docker images and Docker pages up to snuff. So if you want to download us as a container, feel free to check us out on Docker Hub. We have a community Slack, and we have a website on VictoriaMetrics.com that should link you to all those other resources. Did I miss anything?
No, that's awesome, Matthias. Man, it's like you knocked it out of the park. So again, thanks so much, Matthias, for again being the co-host and putting on this good session. For anybody who's watching this live or is going to watch it on demand, we hope you find it valuable. If you do have any questions and you want to talk to us directly, you can always reach out right to VictoriaMetrics. You can check us out on the website as well, because we're happy to connect and show you how to get hands-on with some of the stuff and answer any other questions that you may have. And of course, if you want to just get hands-on right away in the least resource intensive possible way, is if you hit VictoriaMetrics Cloud, we offer a free trial in there, and you can put some of this stuff through the paces, see what it looks like, see how it works, and take it from there. So anyway, thank you all so much. We look forward to seeing you next month, and summer is over. So this was our last beach podcast, stream. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.